this is Gamer 1745 here, and we're going to be playing some Strategic Command World War I, and yes, continuing the Ludendorff Offensive, and the lines are breaking. Well, does this mean success or of total victory, or just a marginal one? Well, this is going to be interesting, and Arno is finally back. Good to see you, my friend. I hope you are getting better. Let me just check and make sure we're getting through to the interwebs. Are we here on YouTubing? Yes, we are. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, I'm sure you do. But yes, good to hear you. All right. Okay, so we're going to continue with this turn. Let's zoom out a little bit more. I hope this is still understandable by viewers here. The counters have gotten smaller, but we're seeing more of the map. Now, there's multiple reasons we're playing this, but part of it is I just really enjoy the scale of this scenario. But it does sort of show, how do I put this? This is not a simulation in either that this is what happened historically, obviously not, because we're doing much better. Or is it a simulation of what, of how it would really work, if you will. And it's definitely not that. But it does give you an idea. And I think it does. RNG God. Yeah, that's a lot of pushing in here. Again, there's Paris, our ultimate objective, and we can see the front line that we really pushed into. That, this illustrates how you could do things, or things could have been done different. And I don't mean, how do I put this? I don't mean the participants not being the participants. Someone was asking in some, author's presentation, what if the National Socialists weren't the National Socialists? Could they have won in World War II? Just trying not to get demonetized. And to a point, the author, says something like, I forget what exactly he says, but then they wouldn't have wanted to fight World War II. The driving goals in World War II were there, yes, but, because they were there because the parties were who they were. And they were sort of talking about occupation policies, and if they had done different, radically different occupation policies, would they have been able to, produce more equipment and then have been able to win the war, kind of thing. I see, and again, I am far, I know 10 times more about World War II as I know about World War One. Now, I will say there's a lot more to learn about World War II. I mean, you know, the first global war or war fought across the globe, I think, is the 7 Years' War, because there is some, ship to ship type action off the coast, China or that kind of area between the British and the French, and the British and the French fight in India against each other, and there's definitely what is called the French and Indian War in North America. And, I don't know if there's anything directly in, South America, but it is sort of fought on, around the globe. It wasn't just, Alexander, he, yes, he starts in Europe, but basically fights, and yeah, he goes into, doesn't really so much fight, but occupies into Egypt, which is Africa. But basically, he's just moving into Asia. So his whole campaign is basically just an Asian campaign. It's not really multi-continental, and if so, it is so only so because it's technical and not a real. Because I think it's, yeah, just going into Egypt is more just an occupation slash liberation, whatever kind of move, more so than any sort of battle. But hey, I'd love to learn. If I'm wrong, please post. Um, and so yeah, that's the 7 Years' War. And so World War One, yeah, there's the German cruiser out in the Indian Ocean that plays around for a while and disturbs the British. You have up until past the end of the war, actually, you have Leto von Borbeck and his army marching around Tanganyika and eventually down into Mozambique because Portugal joins the war and whatnot. So you have action in Africa, you have action with Turkey in Asia, just sort of right there. But out in Far East Asia, you just have the siege of the German concessions and the Japanese picking up some of the Pacific Islands that the Germans had. Nothing really significant there. Where World War II obviously is just so everywhere. It's I think the one, well, you can't really find a real engagement down in Antarctica just because we haven't found the secret Nazi bases down there. That's why. No, but it's happening everywhere between the submarines, the commerce raiders, yes, from the Germans, but then the Japanese all over Asia and the Pacific, and so it's really truly a war that to know so much more about. But there is still so much more about World War One that I don't know. But and I know that's sort of a long way around to getting to what I was wanting to say is it seems to me the Germans were learning lessons faster, quicker than the Western Allies about how to fight the war. But it seems the Allies, and this could just be, but I don't think so, could just be more attached to the greater world. But I think they are more innovative on new weapons. But then I'm thinking about the Zeppelins because that's fairly innovative, and the submachine gun. I don't know. So yeah, I think what I have tried to show with this series here is, and it's again, and I know this is sometimes a long ways to it, the path to Paris isn't here. It's been up here and over here, which has weakened the center enough that then you get to push to Paris. So yeah, that's, I guess, the long way introduction. All right. Well, we've got 5 rounds here. We can attack there. So let's fire. have a shot, yes. Save the rounds. Ah, well. This is actually rather helpful now that you moved down there. Now we take this. Hey, Michael Fox, good to have you here. All right, so now, again, we're weakening the front. We're hitting them, in some cases, not where they ain't, necessarily, but we're going to move you up, but where they're weak. Yep, taking them out. And that's why we focused on them, because we're going to be having to stretch our lines thinner as we push in, and just numbers do matter, units and whatnot. Okay. 3 shells. Do we want to push there? Large group of... Yeah, we'll fire one. 5. So we traded... Okay, they can make it to there, I think, maybe. Oh. That was a little painful. Now here... Here's a question from Michael Fox. What did Germans want from World War I? A situation similar to what Japan probably wanted in the Greater Sphere. I mean, that is a very, very excellent question. What did Germany want from World War I? I've read a few things, quite honestly. And everything that I've read has been vaguely sourced, meaning not this person said X, if you know what I mean, and not even just translated to English. So it's sort of like Germany's afraid of rising power Russia, so they wanted, to weaken Russia in the war or something like that. And then I definitely have heard, in some of them pre-World War I, what have been described as ultra-nationalist or sort of extremist types that were, which might be proto-national socialist later on, if you will, types, wanting to expand Germany's control. But I don't know, and again, this definitely comes from ignorance of the situation. I don't know that Germany and also to a point, who or what is Germany? Is it the Kaiser? And definitely the Kaiser had, you could say definitely the Kaiser's in charge, but from some of the descriptions, again, it could be apocryphal, but some of the descriptions, particularly at the start of the war, the Kaiser isn't controlling events, even within Germany. I'm not just talking about world events. I'm just talking. He's, like I've been talking about here with this series, is my coalescing ideas of what we lost with World War I and what has become cogs and formulas. And for anyone who hasn't been listening to this series, cogs and formulas is what I'm using to refer to as people, and we can see elements prior to it. I mean, nothing just like flips on a dime when we're talking on a global scale. But we really see it happening in this war and post-war. People are treated like interchangeable cogs. And two, we are fighting over formulas. Capitalism versus communism. Democracy versus dictatorship. These, different formulas. And if we just get the right formula, we just figure out the right formula, everything will be fine. Idea. Okay. I'm not trying to do another lecture on that. Just trying to mention that is, an outgrowth of World War I. But we do have the idea that with personal, we'll call it, for the moment, we'll call it rulership. The governorship is to govern something is to like limit things, right? Ruling is like telling everybody what to do. And this gets to some of the basic philosophies of roles of government. But a medieval king could not just be, shall we say, the supreme court of the land, because court does come from like the idea of a royal court, and like King Solomon's, whose baby is it? Well, I'll cut it in half, and each parent can have half the baby, But actually, the first instance court, meaning the first court you go to, even in a largish country like medieval England, the king was hearing at times, because he would travel around. And I'm talking not late medieval, I'm talking fairly early medieval here. Traveling around the country, and people would bring their disputes to the king to be settled. Well, by the time you get to not just the modern sophistication, and I will get to your next comment, Michael, but by the time you get to the scale of something like, 19th century government, and the second, and we're looking at institutions, which definitely goes into the idea of formulas and whatnot, but of institutions, whatever the leader is, whether it's a president, a prime minister, an emperor, a kaiser, a king, whatever, he can't physically, there's not enough, minutes or hours in the day for them to make all of the decisions. So people have to, whatever your formula is, you have to have, institutions that have power. And, the reason they have power is, shall we say, the agricultural ministry. They have power because they're managing the food supply of your nation. And yeah, they might be powerful enough in a way, you could say, to tell the farmers what to do. But yeah, if the farmers sort of kind of intellectually and emotionally understand that, hey, this is World War II, we're Britain, and if we don't follow the program, even if the program makes no sense, because they would make wide sweeping decisions that would make no sense for a particular farm. But we still follow the program, and we really don't buck the system because we're, being, starved out by submarines and whatnot. But if you don't quite have that level of emergency, the farmers, have a lot of pushback. The farmers have a lot of say in what goes on in the the agricultural world. So it's a give and take. So yeah, the Kaiser isn't the only voice. The Kaiser isn't some sort of all-powerful dictator because he knows that if he tries to be, he's going to have a lot of problems on his hands because there's a lot of other interests in the country. So where we do see with the National Socialist regime with Hitler a much stronger central idea of what we want out of like the war. I still think, and again, I could be wrong, that it's as much as we have alliance with Austria, there is a power balance in the world, and if we don't honor that alliance with Austria, this is not the only, the only factor that would be thought of, but the main factor is how I'm thinking this is. If we don't honor that alliance with Austria, when it comes to our turn, and history will have an our turn, well, who's going to honor an alliance with us? And there are great powers out there: Britain, France, Russia, Austria. The new one, is it really a great power? Not yet, never really becomes it, but Italy. And then, and they're not worried. America or China are all too far away, or Japan, for their real calculations. Maybe their calculations on colonial adventures, but not on their real survivability or lack thereof. Who's going to be at our aid? And so I know that there were atrocities, and I don't want to make light of it, particularly a lot of it played up over Belgium. And like I say, I know they were there. I know the Germans had because of the sniping that had happened during the Franco-Prussian War, Germany had basically, I'll call it a zero tolerance program when it came to sort of sniping, sort of within or without uniform, and serious reprisals, not just against the sniper, as they're moving through Belgium, which was supposedly neutral. And, so I get some of the Germany be bad in World War I, but I don't feel it overly bad over any of the other players. If human rights records, France doesn't have the greatest human rights record in Africa. I mean, they're not, I don't see their empires as evil empires. It's just the brutality of the time. And same with Britain. The Britain is and I know Britain's empire best of all just because it's written in English and talked about in English, so I can have easier access to it, if you will. I'm sure there's a lot of documentaries on various stages of the Spanish Empire in Spanish, and just how many of them have been translated into English for me to consume, if you will. So I know it best, and there's a lot of do-gooderism in the British Empire, but still, if there comes down to it, like the fighting the Fuzzy Wuzzies out in Sudan or something, the British will be brutal. So now of course Germany being brutal to other Europeans as opposed to people out in the wider world. So I don't see Germany as a particular evil or bad country in World War I. It really comes down to alliances and power relations more so than anything else for me. So I I'm firmly of the camp that the country that has the greatest responsibility for the First World War is Serbia. It first instance, it's Serbia. So yeah, we can talk about Germany's, if you will, because they were non-participant in the war. Um, they were not part of anybody's alliance, and they didn't really feel like being part of anybody's alliance. Germany's invasion of Belgium, because we are starting. Hey, Extreme Finger, or otherwise known as Jan. Um, oh, okay. He just also, I've read something about colonial power Africa and getting a foothold onto more land in that continent to challenge Britain. I don't think that that is a motivating factor for Germany to entering World War One. I don't think that's motivating it. It may be, if you're just because they always look overloaded, um, loading a bunch of stuff on top of a camel, and often the straw that breaks the camel's back. Yeah, colonial empire is definitely a thing. It's more of, I would say, it's more. Bad moderator just noticed me. Yes. Um, it's more the motivating factor for Britain to enter the war. I am talking to a few people, and it's made me realize the reason Britain enters the war. Yeah, a major element is Britain's um, uh, likes to see a divided Europe, so that it doesn't want to, see a, all conquering any power, like Napoleon or whatever in Europe. Or before that, the Bourbon kings, or before that, the Habsburg kings, so they're definitely that. But because of cultural, religious, and geopolitical reasons, Britain and Prussia, particularly, but also generally Protestant Germany, Hanover, as I'm sure Michael Fox gets that reference, um, is the natural ally of Britain. It's the Kaiser's building that high seas fleet that really, I think, moves Britain from a German alliance to a French alliance. Now, we can see various reasons to have a French alliance, but France and Britain are natural colonial um, uh, competitors, and from an invasion or whatever standpoint, Britain and France are more of a, or France is more of a threat to Britain than Germany is. So it's that damn colonial, or that imperial fleet, I should say, and that's partially driven by their colonial ambitions, but is driving Britain into France's arms. Now, yeah, part of it is the formation of the German Empire instead of German states. But if it really looked like there was a Franco-Russian grand alliance in Europe, I would say Britain would be more likely to come in on a pro-German stance than a pro-French stance, except for that fleet. So yeah, that I really see the fleet as Germany making the war a world war than just a regional war. So I really just see Germany in many ways. I mean, they're very aggressive because, success in the Franco-Prussian War, success at the end of the Napoleonic era, but I really see Germany just being defensive here. That's my take on it. I hope that's given you enough explanations as to why I'm thinking this, and not just saying it to say it. Okay, so now we are ready to push into here. They've fallen back to somewhere here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move up. We're going to attack these artillery pieces, which are going to go down. Well, let's... Remember, we need to move along rail and road lines to keep supplies. So we want to close this. So we don't want to draw too much away from here, but we don't need to worry so much about here because we've got here. So just put, you get deep into them. We get to see where they are. There we go. Now I can come into here. And know that. Okay, so they formed a line here. Very interesting. A lot of artillery. I don't think we should necessarily make contact with that line up in here. I know it'll give them a chance to, we will entrench here, and a chance to withdraw if that's what they are. But it looks like they're trying to form a line. That could come to here. So let's... That would be a nice attack. Well, let's ignore that for just a moment. Let's see what kind of success we can get down here. Okay, well, let's start with a reconnaissance bombing. Basically, reconnaissance with bombs. A little bit of damage. Now that we know their positions, let's do a ground attack. No great effect. Oh, let's fire a few shells. No, one more shot. Let's just give it to them. View that way. Okay, very good. These guys will move into here and entrench. Rotating the entrenchments around. I think that's the way we want to go. Yes, we're cutting the French off. Two shells. Probably not going to really push there this turn. So let's find their positions. And attack from there. Well, I know we're not in France. I'm gonna move in though. We're gonna move you here and the French to the north. You into there to hold the line here. Now here, how far can we move up? Let's move you here. You all the way to here. Just a short train hop, really, but still. I'm gonna get a trench. That. These guys, are they entrenched? No. It's entrenched. Well, what am I doing now? Rotate. No. There we go. That frees you up. Move, and you can fill in the gaps. Entrench. Yeah, that looks like a good direction to entrench. You won't be, but I'm more worried about that mass coming down on top of me. Okay, you. Oh, yeah, we want to move the artillery forward. Artillery forward. Yeah, that might be good. Supply. Next. We're gonna go down in supply? Oh, interesting. Okay. Figured they were around there, so. Reinforce these guys. How are the tanks? Very limited in speed. Hitting just sort of mildly mostly for this game, and are very slow. We will retreat back. Just wanted to go in there and weaken them. Okay, now this leaves him to move. I think this way. Alright, now these guys here. Let's get you down to here. You guys can just fill in. So we've moved out a division and replaced it with a brigade holding this area. They are secondary supply source, so they're not going to, completely run out of supply. But they're not going to be able to get more units into this pocket. So I really don't fear them being offensive. I mean, they're Frenchmen, but, the other sort of offensiveness. Two more rounds for you again. Maybe not quite the result I was hoping for, but still. We move north to deal with them. No, I think that can take care of itself in time. Let's move you down this way. You can come back. Help with the supplies. How many rounds? 2 rounds. Now I'm going to save up the rounds for later. You can come down here and try. Not that it's really needed, but I'm just trying to push on these guys a bit. They're not really moving. We'll see about sending up the reinforcements here. In good supplies to a degree at least. I don't know. See, I don't know if I should move him this way or down this way right now. Now what we can do here is, we're going to move you here. We're going to move you here. We want to move those along the rail lines, because if we're going to probably SR them around, okay, you guys can, they just don't have enough points, so they're walking. We just might as well put them on trains. Where can we get you? Get you all the way over to here. Or here. Want you up here? Yeah. This looks sort of weak and scattered here a bit. The British forces here. So I think we'll just come to here. That will allow us to have you march into here. Brigade covering same part of the front. Okay, what's Jan saying? If you are encircled, then you're able to cut the supplies for them. Well, yes and no. This here, Verdun, is a secondary supply source. So we're not... I don't know all of... Just because I haven't read all the rules for this game, all of the details. But what it will do is... so I think they will remain in supply. I think they will remain into decent level supply. The big thing is they won't be able to place new units, when you or reorganized units that are, had formerly been destroyed, won't be able to be placed in here, and they won't be able to get in reinforcements either by SRing them in, strategic redeployment, or by marching them in once they're cut off. So these won't just lose supply. Now, these 4 hexes here are official forts. And if you move an enemy unit next to a fort, there's a sort of every turn bombardment penalty. It's not quite the same as when we're shooting artillery shells, but it sort of kind of is. So I don't, unless I'm going to actually assault a fortification here, I don't move units right in there. That's why I've allowed them to have this buffer zone. So like here's Epinal is another fort that's also secondary supply. So I don't want to move my forces right next to it or here at Belfort unless I'm actually going to be assaulting the fort. It would be better to stay back a little ways. So yeah, and this gives a very clear idea of what we are dealing with. France has some more, I think, and you'll notice the actual forts are like Epinal have fortifications all the way around, like Metz does up here, as opposed to just 3 sides. And the entrenchments have gotten deeper, and there's a few more, I think, around. I'm just not spotting them at the moment. But yeah, so we're not going to, in the scale of this game, to deal with that. Is it a good idea to use tanks on the forts? I don't think particularly. I don't know that I'm going to attack this fort. Because if I can screen it mostly with brigades and keep them from breaking out, I think I'm pretty good at just leaving it be. Now, some of these others, well, the way to get them is to move up artillery and pound them and then go in. That's sort of the best way, I think. Okay, so we're replacing some of our frontline soldiers here with Austrians and brigades. So because Epinal is here, this really isn't, I know we've sort of broken through here, which is, I'm more thinking of turning the flank and seeing what they do than, look at supply, than actually hitting this very hard. Okay, well, so that would have a 3 level. Okay, so I think we will go here. I'm going to attack you, which I normally don't. I'm going to do what I expect to be an even trade, though it wasn't quite. Just weaken this force a bit. Even that up just to keep him to try to lunge out at me. And the more forces that come down here, we can zoom out one click here. The more forces that come down here, I'm happy with. Now I'm happy with the idea of breaking through and taking some of these, cities that get me a little more points. But the forces that are over here means that they're not going to be in my way of taking Paris. So again, what is the best path to Paris? It's not necessarily to drive straight at Paris. Yes, we are in the sense that we have an opening, so we're going to exploit it. But if I were to run into some big solid forces here or big solid forces here, I'm just going to push on other flanks. All right, well, let's use the reinforcement tool here to see who I can reinforce. That. These either operated this turn or just are not in that good a supply. I think I've absorbed at least some of the lessons of Sun Tzu. Not that I'm necessarily a great master at it, but the idea that the direct approach is rarely the best approach. It can be because the enemy may think, hey, he's going to take the indirect approach, so we're going to, reinforce the flanks. And then if you know that. Hello, Mr. Fish Plays. How you doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to wait for, but okay. Let me know. Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to press against that mass too much. Yeah, I did press on that one unit. So let's move that up to here. We could move here. Okay, well, I think I'm pretty good for this turn. British, American, and Japanese forces land at Vladivostok in Russia. And of course I'm playing against an AI, which I don't think is a bad AI, but we're now seeing them abandoning some positions here. But it's not as dynamic as a human player who might realize at this time it would be better to fall back and create a good, strong line of defense and abandon some of these more forward areas like this whole pocket here. Now, I don't particularly. And been suggested to me, and maybe I should next time. And instead of I come back at this game once this is completed and play it from the ally side. And I've sort of thought that might be a fun thing to do. I know it's the challenge is for the German stuff. See if you can, succeed in the offensive, but if you can get the Allies to hold well. Okay, they moved up. Maybe cutting that tank off. Hey, Mirror Man. Hello, fellow Slytherin fans. Okay, artillery back here. Infantry getting ready to come across the channel. Okay, an 19th Ersatz Division, which I think is a rebuild of an earlier damaged division. Okay, but we could bring him here. Between some of these forces, I think we have a fair amount. Maybe that's, I think, just a temporary thing. Here is more of a traffic. I sort of like here because we can get up to Abbeville and cut off this whole northern flank. I think that will be nice for us, so we'll put you there. Now, again, these detachments or brigades, or however you want to call them, they're good for, like, continue to hold the line like here, but they're also good to hold the flanks of a penetration so that they are useful for our big push. Let's put one here. We have 3. This isn't scientific. One here. This is just more gut instinct than anything else. Okay, we have like 2 divisions here. Yeah, let's put one here so we can at least relieve one of these divisions for other things. Yeah, we got a good pocket here for Verdun. They do. That is a supply source, so it's not like a. In the scale of this game, it could hold out quite potentially well, unless I really want to hammer it, and I really don't. I could just ignore it and let it exist. Well, we will, encircle it and whatnot. Okay, so let's move you up and kill this division HQ. Good, that's a little less supply, a little less organization. Would be a shame if that pocket gets nuked now, wouldn't it? Wink, wink, yes. Arno likes to nuke places. He'd probably like it if I played the ICBM game and nuked everybody. All right, well, let's come up here. We've got lots of artillery. Five rounds. Let's get at least 3 rounds. Let's do 4 rounds. We'll go back so far. And I don't overly feel I'd love to continue to roll along here, roll up this flank. But if I can just keep pounding on units now. Hey, hello. Okay, yeah, they've attacked, but these guys haven't. So let's swap them out. Didn't quite kill the unit. Oh, let's pound on the Belgians some. Don't know that's going to get us good enough attack odds. We're just going to reinforce here. Aid. 4 rounds. We're going to hit them hard. The British may be thinking they're getting ready for an offensive against me, but that didn't get destroyed, but it got non-operational. The one that was here that moved around. So that's basically 3 divisions taken out. One will be back faster than reinforcements. Well, well, just brigade. Oh. And because it was just a brigade, I was willing to move in without, well, actually, let's higher. They can come up with 2 and then entrench. No, I think I want it this way. They can come up and entrench that way. These guys can fill it. Now we have a bit of a push here. Reinforce these. Well, these guys can come up and entrench. Straight south. I was going to move him here, but I don't know that that's a big problem. Move you up, though. Hey, Elizabeth, how you doing? Punching is good. There we go. So now we've got a considerable advance. I know these are a little moments of direct attack, but still. We're risking it. We're pushing forward. The offensive is going very well. I mean, hey, we're almost at the gates of Paris. Not really, but... Now's the time for barrages. I like this game mechanic a lot. Because, yes, obviously the numbers of guns, and we're talking World War II, but other times, you know, other wars and things, it's similar to a point. Numbers of guns do matter. I'm not going to try to make it out that it doesn't. But it was something like, oh, and I'm sure I'm getting this wrong, but it was something like there was a bunch of artillery on the southern Russian front facing the Austrians, or something like that. The Russians had, and they got a bunch of artillery down there, but they had something like 5 rounds per gun, you know, on average. So it's not like they can shoot at a lot of places or give heavy barrages. And I'm sure I got that butchered, but the point is guns. You know, having the guns here, yes, is important, but it's how many rounds have we got stored up here, ready to go, is what can matter a lot more than the number of guns we have ready on a particular front. Okay, see, that's just what I wanted to see. I wanted to see how well. We're defending. Oh shit! Enemy contact. Okay. That's just too tempting of a target to let that just sit there. But we have very light forces. Move up to 3. Hopefully I'm not overextending myself. I bet to a bit we are. You, I'm planning on just reinforcing because you're so weak right now. Okay, you can come to here. No, you're not entrenched. Here we go. So I could have, and I was thinking of trying to push up here, but the temptation here, which is heavy, of getting me to, that's 4, about 6 points. Hopefully I can hit this artillery. If I take this cavalry unit out now, he won't be able to move around and disrupt my push. They did sort of move into the killing zone here again. Unit, yeah, that's more just exploiting bad AI, but still. Okay. Now we can't, I mean, it may look like I can come down here, but if we look at supply, currently supplying extern, it's just going to wither and die. So there's no real point in pushing here. We either push here and then come down this way, or we push down this way. So we have to think about it in that terms. We've cut off here. This out here now, this part of the front, is much more of my strategy that I sort of call flow like water. Is, yes, you got to pay attention to things like where the roads / railroads go. And so long as you do that, you just flow into empty spaces, you flow into where you can overwhelm the enemy, and you take them out. not looking for any great objective. Because again, if my strategy, which it is for this game / whatever, is to take Paris, so it really doesn't matter what I take out here, just so long as I'm getting the French to react to me. That's what matters. In supply, I'm looking for here. Okay, so we are sort of out of supply there right now. Haven't quite reacted the way I wanted them to. It's just a brigade. Okay. Well, that wasn't maybe the best move, but it was hopefully just to chip away at them a little bit more. That lack of supply is not able to move very far, so we're not going to continue that mistake. Hopefully that gets a little bit of supply there. Next turn, maybe. Moving closer to your troops. But we find the cracks, we find the weaknesses. Weapon and inch. Marines, yes, they go to. Oh well, no, that's fine. We'll yeah, okay. Not entrenched, but does well. Okay, this. Oh, they can't move that now. But there's not a lot that can attack him. They can score some points, but not. Maybe some great. Yes, I should have used the air power better. I imagine the forests are hell to fight in. I wouldn't think so. Compared to fighting in the open against machine guns, you know, and I know the open isn't quite, the American plains that are just, pure flat open grassland that's fairly short grass. It's not like tall elephant grass in Southeast Asia or something. Yeah, there's fields and there's hedgerows and there's, not like bocage of Normandy, but there's little stone walls and whatnot. Uh, you know, um, I'm sure it takes a certain amount of training, but and of course the defenders, they have a certain advantage, but unless they're you know super native to the area, I don't know. Yeah, what definitely happens, and you can see it sort of ultimately in cities, is the amount of troops it takes, because city fighting can come at you from all directions. And to properly occupy and clear the space, and you can do so, and but to properly do it and move through and clear it and keep it clear, because you have sewers on the one end and high rises on the other, and the ability to, you know, be in there. And so it really, the amount of area that a platoon would hold in a, you know, just standard bit of countryside, some hills, some grassland, a few trees here and there, not like a big forest, but, what a platoon might hold there, a battalion might hold in a city. I'm not talking about just a village, but in a city, um, that same amount of area, that the density of fighting is a lot more. And so I figure a forest is sort of that kind of way, because if it's a moderately dense forest, if the enemy wants to hide, you might trip over them, but short of that, they can be hiding and then wait for you to, get really close or actually bypass you and then ambush them. So you sort of have to spread out in skirmish order to get through it. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's my ignorance of just how bad it would be to fight in the forest. Okay, these guys, let's use this tool here. Okay, they can be reinforced. Oh, I should have used these guys. There we go. Another unit reduced from the pocket. Now down here they pushed into here. So, well, now you can see the issue here is this game allows a maximum of 3 sides, and for some reason they built it. Yeah, I built it looking this way, so I can put them in essence in the flank. This does have rivers to the north here, but very light casualties to achieve our pushing. We're going to come here. Let's move you down here. Trench straight south. Just like that. Well, maybe I shouldn't leave it moved here. Maybe we'll just... eliminate him this turn. Okay, well, there we go. Let's upgrade. Because notice he still has older weapons, so we're going to upgrade him to late war standards. You can come in and occupy there. You can put this down here. Okay, Arno is going to be back. Better a forest than a heavily dug in line of death, but a forest can be... Oh, God, yeah. See, this is, you know, warfare changes. And I know that I could just say that, yes, over history, yes. But warfare changes from the 18th century to the 20th century. I know the 19th century is in there, and that's sort of the transition period. In the 18th century, which comes, the word, you know, means multiple things, but regimentation. The idea of a bunch of men doing the same thing at the exact same time is very important. Like marching. Way back when I was in Naval Junior Reserve Officer training, I sort of questioned, well, why are we still doing all this, you know, drill, you know, marching around, you know, walking in step, if you will. It wasn't, you know, anything terribly fancy we were doing. And part of it was explained to me was, you know, yes, part of it is getting discipline into the soldiers. But part of it was still, and this was sailors, but getting discipline into them, you know, following commands. And part of it was it's still the most efficient way to move a lot of people around all at once. So instead of, you know, having 100, you know, sailors or soldiers or construction workers or whatever, all standing around and saying, okay, everyone, let's head over to the mess hall, you know, and they all sort of, you know, because they're hungry, etc., etc. Yeah, they all head over there. But to go, form up, you know, and everyone, you know, gets into formation real quickly because they're trained in knowing to drill it, and then you go, you know, right face, forward march. You don't have to tell them where they're going. You just direct them there, and all those 100 people, without bumping into each other, without bumping into others, all get to that mess hall. And yeah, probably better and more efficiently, and this is presuming everyone knows where the mess hall is and whatnot, but probably still more efficiently than just saying, let's all head over there. And this definitely comes from the regimentation that we see in the 18th century. Yeah, we can look at the phalanx and other formations way back in the ancient world, but that's sort of lost. And there really, really isn't regimentation, the idea of this in, say, the Middle Ages. You know, they'd formed lines and such, but the idea that everybody was, you know, same footfalls falling on the ground all at the same time was basically lost, as far as I know, on things like the, you know, the Middle Ages pikemen or something. So, because again of the nature of the weapons, the projectile weapons have gotten enough penetration that armor is not that helpful. I mean, it still is helpful, and we still see the cuirassiers through the Napoleonic Wars wearing armor. But, if you want to really think about it, the main French mode of attack in the Napoleonic Wars, so at the very height of the flintlock musket, very pinnacle of its technology, the French mainly used the bayonet as their primary infantry weapon of war. A lot of times, less than a third of their formation could effectively shoot muskets at the enemy if they even tried to. Now, there's a lot of controversy in writers these days, and some are getting input from the French, as to whether all the attacks in column against, particularly, and this is the British often writing about this, weren't meant to be attacks in column. They were meant to be move, and it's a big mass column, move the infantry in column with the intention of forming a line before attacking. But because of Wellington's use of reverse slopes and other things, the French didn't have maybe a very good idea of where the British were, and maybe a mistaken idea of Britain's speed and handling of troops, where either fighting the Spaniards or fighting the Austrians that, are much slower in reacting to situations on the battlefield, that the French thought they could move up rapidly, the commanders did, that they could move up rapidly in column and quickly form a line prior to being effectively opposed by the enemy. That really they wanted to move in line to column, but then really it comes into the question of what units are we talking about and how effectively are these units controlled. And especially if you look at the French Revolutionary period, a lot of them are just sort of mobs with muskets that they're, barely controlled. And so that's part of the reason why they're using columns to attack. I mean, there's multiple reasons. And they very effectively bash those columns into lines of muskets. Well, if you've got a bunch of guys that are carrying muskets, and you have breastplates or chainmail, well, chainmail somewhat effective, but breastplates very would be, against those bayonets, and that especially gives the soldiers the will to stand against that column, knowing that it's coming in and they can't just shove that bayonet into your guts. Now, they can still poke you with it, your arms, your legs, maybe if they hit you in the head, poke you in the head with it. But you're much more protected. But basically, armor's gone. But it would still be very, very effective against sabers and very effective against bayonets. But not terribly effective against muskets, especially if you want to be able to march your soldiers around a lot. Because, yes, they can make, and often against pistols, they can make breastplates in the 18th century with decent steel that will stop pistol balls or musket balls, but they're starting to get heavy. And so they've given up armor. But still the inaccuracies inherent in the musket, along with the speed in which particularly horse, but also infantry can move across the field, you need to be in formation to best deal with an attack of steel. So regimentation, you're seeing that and working very effectively. And a YouTuber, an American YouTuber, was talking about the Revolutionary War. And man, I wouldn't stand out there in that line. No, you couldn't get me to do that, blah, 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 blah. And, he's, from, by accent, somewhere in Appalachia, maybe Kentucky or wherever. And he's just so wrong. So wrong. He would stand next to everybody else very voluntarily, if he were actually there, not because somebody's ordering him to, because the enemy muskets are so unlikely to actually hit you. But yeah, as a massed line, it's more likely to hit you. But that cavalryman, or 3 or 4 of them riding at you with a horse, or 2 or 3 British redcoats, because the British were thought to be some of the most excellent bayonet guys, in that period, that those guys would be dashing through the forests as light infantry, and they did during the American Revolutionary War. And when it comes to that bayonet, yeah, you pull up your musket, or even if you're a rifleman, and you shoot one of them right between the eyes, and he goes down, but the other 2 skewer you, you're not going to do very well. But if you are part of a line of soldiers, well, if you can put one right through the eyes, yeah, you're good. But then you're, the enemy. But then it's you and however many of your friends all have sharp, pointy things to equalize against the enemy. And so unless they're really going to envelop you and come around your flanks by forming lines of battle, you're sort of one-to-oneing yourself with the enemy, because, and we can talk about some of the details, but just getting more doesn't, they're just waiting to get at you, as opposed to 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. So if you're all out there alone at 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, and they'll hunt you in small little packs, even if there's equal numbers of you and them. They'll come at you in little batches and take you down one at a time. So the whole concept of that war, of training and military thought, and now you can see, now he is probably looking at instinctively. I mean, yeah, I know it's part of the modern thing, is seeing the lines of troops, and why would you just stand there? Well, part of the reason you're standing there because you get to reload your musket quickly, kind of thing and whatnot. And they did periodically have different battles at different times. Sometimes, including at Waterloo, they get the British to lay down on the ground when they're being bombarded by enemy artillery and whatnot. So sometimes they will lay everybody down on the ground, but keeping formation. But they're really looking at something like the American Civil War, in which you have muzzle-loading rifles, I want to specify, that are fast to reload. I don't know if you realize this. Oh, good, Arna's back. I don't know if you realize this, but when you have a Kentucky rifle or a German Jaeger rifle, you want that bullet in there tight against the lands and grooves. Actually, the grooves are not where you want it tight against, but against the lands of the barrel. You want it tight, to a point that sometimes they're literally using a little sort of hammer or mallet to get that ramrod, to get that ball all the way down, seated against the powder, and you want it all the way down, seated against the powder. Because some of the times they were wrapping those balls in leather to get them tight. Sometimes they're just tight down there naturally. And that's good for the first few shots, but can be very slow to reload. But as the fouling, the powder residue builds up, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to put that ball all the way down. Well, by the time you're getting to the American Civil War, you're mostly, the Confederates and some, even the North early on, were still using round ball to a degree. But the Confederates clue in, just doesn't take a whole lot of time. They're using the Minet ball by, I think, George Minet or whoever. I forget the first name if it isn't George. Designs a ball that has, a pointy bullet on point on one end of the bullet and a inverted cone on the back end of it. So you can have a roughly 58 caliber rifle, but shove 57 caliber roughly, and they're not quite, and they vary a little bit, ball down there very quickly. It will just fall, rattle, sort of, shall we say, all the way to the bottom of the the barrel, all the way down there. And you still want to put that piece of paper in to sort of hold it there, but with that cone in there, the inverted cone, that'll expand from the pressures, and that grabs the lands and grooves, so you can reload that muzzle loading rifle fast. Eventually, if you shoot enough, you can create enough powder fouling, etc., etc. But you can reload that as fast as you can reload a smoothbore, nice big gapped musket. But you have the accuracy of a rifle. And so now you're talking about having enemies that shoot at you that, there was about an equal chance when you had a line of people lining up and shooting at you, you had about an equal chance the bullet would land, before it gets to your feet, too low, or higher above you. Each one of those is about an equal chance of them actually coming in at that line of, unless you're talking like literally like 20 meters or 30 meters, and sometimes they did get that close. But, so you have about a 1/3 chance that the ball is either going above you or below you, let alone hitting you. And then there's still gaps, as well as, are they, is the bullet going to hit you or the guys next to you? So, in that sort of world, and they're not necessarily aiming well, but you're probably having a 1 or a 10% chance that the balls are actually, hitting a target at a musket volley kind of line, and further out it just gets even worse and worse. And if you're a lot of troops have almost no training in actually live firing their guns. A lot of armies had zero. Per year they would fire 0 bullets. Britain firing about 30 or 60 a year in peacetime, somewhere in there, I forget exactly. And that was one of the highest rates of ammo usage at that. Figure shooting somewhere, I was like, and I forget the details, but shooting on average 30 shots a year. And you're now the best trained marksman out there. And I say it that way because, what they do a lot of is, what they would in the period called dumb show, is that they would go through and use the ramrod, but never load bullets, go through that routine of loading, so they could load and shoot, or, and do all that fast. And they would do that and march and do all that stuff. But actually shoot the musket in peacetime was quite rare, just because it was expensive. And so even, Frederick the Great's army, which was drilled, and without demonstrating, but they're fire by platoons, rolling fire, really well trained, constant. And so when you face somebody like the French, it would go boom, and the battalion or the company or whatever would fire at you. Where when you're facing a similar sort of size, battalion of Frederick the Great, it would be because each little platoon was firing separately, and so it was a constant fire, and reload, fire, reload, and so they're constantly shooting at you. But that's not done trained to accuracy. That's just trained to load and shoot fast. And you just wait until the enemy's within effective range to start that drill up. And so, yeah, that kind of army is trained to do things by rote. The American Civil War shows, particularly the American Civil War, shows that that is not the future. Now, they're not quite yet no longer afraid of cavalry in that they have, magazine-fed guns that just, working a bolt action. And still, yeah, you still have a bayonet on it, and if they come close to you. But what, again, we're talking about World War I and the changes. We see, particularly the Germans with their stormtrooper tactics, in that you're now training your soldiers to act and think independently. They are not waiting for the command to do anything. They may be somebody is whether blowing a whistle, which was still common. I mean, I don't know if they use them today, but they're definitely using them in World War II, or a trumpet, or even early World War I they were still using drums, but that gets a lot lost. But signal out to your troops, form line of skirmish, and then forward, and then you're moving through the woods independently, and you're watching who's on your right and left. Okay, you're not getting way out in front of your allies, your men of your unit, and you're moving through the woods, and you're forming a skirmish line, but you are determining when you shoot, you are determining when you stop, you are determining when you take cover behind a tree. But you're all still moving forward. And now, yeah, you have officers and NCOs making sure you don't fall too far behind, maybe even to a point making sure you don't get too far in front. And you're clearing through whether it's a forest or just simply, a copse or a clump of trees, significant one, but you can see, you can sort of, from one looking at it, you can see each extreme of the woods. You just got to clear through it. And yeah, so the soldiers are now being trained to do all of that on their own thinking and no longer by commands other than the general, this is what we're doing now. We're clearing the woods. And everyone's just doing their own thing to get through it. And so that sort of training is happening. And I think today, at least the American soldiers and a lot of soldiers out there in the various nations, they're trained to the point of, yeah, working together for sure, but they're not like waiting for somebody to tell them what to do, which is a very different sort of thing. Speaking of Waterloo, Elizabeth says, did you see the new Bonaparte? No, I didn't want to pollute myself with that. The original with actual Soviet soldiers was, as extras, was good, but not so much as the Joaquin Phoenix one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know other than names if that movie has much to do with Napoleon. Uh, so that's sort of my prejudice against that movie. I am very reluctant to see modern movies. He can move up and entrench. That will protect our gun. Just to the north here. Okay, now we're going to move you up to an entrench. You up here on an entrench. Facing, yeah, that way that looks pretty good. portrays him as bumbling fool, comes off as a revisionist fantasy movie. Yeah, yeah, that's. And I know it's a Ridley Scott thing or whatever, but it seems to me that whether you're a famous guy or you're a nobody in a writing room amongst other writers, that you may get a movie written by and they list 6 people or something, so no one's really gonna, maybe you'll break out someday, but nobody's really gonna know who you are still. It seems like there is a lot of emphasis nowadays that they just want to get permission to do a project, so they find something that has a popularity that they think they can sell the people with money on, like Napoleon, because who paid. It'd be really interesting, I guess, to look into who actually paid for the making of Napoleon. Whose money was on the line. And so they just want a backdrop, like a mannequin or store dummy to create their message, their story, their whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be the message du jour of political correctness or whatever, but it could just be, hey, yeah, relationships are tragic or whatever. But whatever message it is, that they're just using it as a frame, as something to tell their story, as opposed to somebody trying to tell Napoleon's story or even Josephine's story, but tell it from Josephine's perspective. But actually tell the actual story and not just a romantic fiction starring names you've heard of from history and costumes that sort of kind of look like from history. History is fascinating. And you could, I'll say this, grab 100 episodes from Napoleon's life. Maybe it's not quite that many, but it would be great stories. You could just look at the story and do good research. And I'm sure there's a bunch written in French, though maybe a bunch of it is later fantasy in the sense that, some person 20, 30 years later wrote down as being true, this was my experience, but sort of, shall we say, dreamt it up, embellished it, whatever. But like his actions during the siege of Toulon. You look, just if you're not familiar, the French Revolution is going on. The city of Toulon is the major, at least in the Mediterranean, the major French naval port, but there's also a city there. And the people of the city are vehemently anti-revolutionary. So they actually invite the British Navy in, and the Spanish Navy also shows up eventually too, into the city. Now the sailors are, a bunch of them, well, most of them, are rather pro-revolutionary. So the British get them, or I think the French have to do it themselves, but get them to remove cannons and powder, or at least the powder, from several of the big ships. And overcrowded for warships, but everybody packed in, that they're allowed to get on their ships and leave, basically sailing around the Mediterranean out into the Atlantic and coming to another French port, just to get the revolutionaries out of there, because they're trouble causing, but they're not really able to take the town. They don't, I guess, have enough muskets or whatever. So they get the revolutionaries out. A bunch of the, Catholic believers in the region are afraid of the revolutionaries. So a bunch of refugees pour into the city, and it's a walled city with outer works fortifications that the French had built, just in peacetime to defend this very big naval base. So it's sort of an all nations ends up coming in, some Italians and others. Royalist units are raised that fight hard um, in there. But basically, the British, I don't know, maybe almost a year, but it's a long time. The British stay there. But it's really Napoleon coming down and eventually taking over the assault on it. But I think at first, if I remember, because I've read the book from the British perspective of the Siege of Toulon, but it's again telling it from the British side of the story. So it doesn't delve into Napoleon's, behind, actions behind the scenes. But that would be a fascinating story and he shows massive amounts of personal bravery, working cannons while under, bringing cannons right up to the enemy, loading them with canister or grape shot, and firing them. And so the enemy's just pelting them with musket rounds, but he's, right there with like 2 guns, right, totally exposed on roadways and whatnot, and could have easily been killed. But that this is sort of the real starting of the Napoleon legend, and you could just tell that story, and that would be, I mean, hell, you could make a mini series out of that if you really wanted to dig into it. And sure, you can put words in people's mouths, but you try to write, and obviously you translate things to English, but you try to write in the spirit, and again, read what other people have, historians have written or people that were there have written. And you could come up with a great story without having to try to put your mark on it. Sure, you put, as a filmmaker, you put your mark on it on the camera angles and the editing of it and all of that kind of artistry, and the costumer, makes it. They don't put their mark on how cool they can design costumes. They put their mark on it as how historically they can make the costumes. And the actors put their mark on it on how well they can portray these historical figures instead of just other sort of dramatic things that they can do. So, and still there's a lot of artistry into making film or television or whatever you want to call it. And just make it the history and the drama. And I guess, calling it, having Napoleon and their people would, even Americans would know that he survives that incident because he goes on to become emperor. So yeah, spoiler alert, he survives the siege of Toulon. But still the methods of it, and if you even do, if you advertise it right, probably 90% of the audience won't know if he succeeds or fails in the siege of Toulon. So if you build up the drama, and the advertising about it, will he succeed? Come in and find out. Everyone who wants to, can pick up a history book or read a Wikipedia article and get spoilers. But without that, they could just go in and see it and have the dramatic effects of will he be able to, and there is sort of there are other revolutionary commanders that he has to displace, if you will, to get fully in command of the operations there. And so you could have a lot of drama that most people, at least in America, and probably most people even in France today, won't know whether Napoleon succeeds or fails at the siege of Toulon or how it all plays out. So other than knowing that, yes, he survives, most people would, have still a drama of what's going to happen in it and how is it going to work out. So yeah, but no, they won't do that. They just don't. Let's see. The guy who wrote The Man in the High Castle TV series, not the book, important note, wrote the Napoleon movie. Okay, and I don't know how good or bad the story is in the Napoleon movie. Okay. Even if the story is great, and if the writing is great, I'm entirely uninterested if they haven't with, again, there can be a dramatic license, especially if you're trying to tell a big sweep of someone's story and not just, you know, a period of 90 days or something. You're trying to tell, multiple years and all that kind of stuff. There's still a lot of scope of what to focus on and how to do it. But, and maybe truncate incidents, take 2 or 3 incidences from different things and sort of put them together a bit. And, there's a lot you can still do that I'm sure detailed historians would quibble with, but would really capture the essence of the characters. So, yeah, it's not necessarily just how good a writer is, it's what they're writing and how they write what they're writing. Napoleon was hit by a musket round during a battle, if memory serves me. I don't remember that. I don't think he was ever wounded by a musket round, as opposed to just being hit by a spent round. Most people are absolutely ignorant of history, ancient and recent. Absolutely, Elizabeth. So that's what I'm saying, is you could still do the marketing so people that are coming to see it have a big question over what it will be. Wreck these artillery pieces before they can escape. Oh, very good. Yes, he's vulnerable, but I'm sort of figuring this line is somewhat of a fixed line of units, so they're not going to move up there. We got these marshes to the south. Let's move. I'm going to have to keep you back there. I'm going to move you this. We're going to move. Because otherwise they'll launch up at my artillery there. I think. To move you here and you here. The film was mostly about his wife and how Napoleon was not a competent man. I didn't pay to watch it, yeah, so it didn't feel scammed, but it was a bad movie and on all the money and no good battle scenes. It's actually a good miniseries about Napoleon. I don't know if I've seen the miniseries about Napoleon. I may have, but I don't remember specifically. I know I think Rod Steiger was the guy who played in the Napoleon movie that Russians, troops and whatnot were used as extras for the battles. I think that's the case. Okay, yeah, we're going to put more troops coming into there than, because we are sort of pushing here, and I'm going to let, if they want to escape from here, they can, move out. But again, see now, look at what we're doing. We're threatening Paris from here. We're threatening Paris from here. The AI may be looking not so much at Paris, but looking at these cities to try to occupy. This is one thing I don't know that people have been able to do well, is to have perception is a very, very interesting thing. How do we perceive things? Does the AI perceive, can it be taught to perceive that holding all of this, however, the importance of these objective hexes may seem to an AI, the idea of creating a timely solid line back here that's shorter, that will take less units to effectively hold the line would be really good, but I don't know how hard it is to teach an AI that. you program it in Siege of Toulon. Napoleon was wounded, okay, in the thigh with a pike wielded by British artillery at the Battle of Rubicon in 19. He was slightly wounded in the left foot by a canister shot. Well, very interesting, Arno. Good. Good. Thank you for that. But yeah, at the Siege of Toulon, you can see he gets close enough to an artillery NCO to get stabbed by a pike or a piece of artillery equipment. Um, that's how aggressive he was being and being shot at, etc. Okay, so I'm trying to move up here in a rapid but hopefully not overextending manner. Let's see about, well, we can... something like here. I don't think they're going to be flying aircraft deep into here anymore. Great, Arno. Hello, Roar Barbarf. Well, Barfel. We probably can teach it that, but doing so in a manner that wouldn't make turn calculations be measured in too damn long is where it starts getting... I hate the word problematic. I hate it. I hate it with a passion, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I've had a lot of familiarity with both Hearts of Iron 3 and Hearts of Iron 4 modding. Some of the, shall we say, AI, whether it really counts as AI, but like production AI, we can get in and mod, tell it what units or tanks to build and what percentages and things like that. But we can't touch the combat AI because it is compiled into the main, executable program. And if it were broken out, it would be so slow to process that it would be that too damn long that you're talking about. So if somebody like Paradox wanted to allow modders to touch the AI, they would have to break that out, allow people to play with it, and then have some sort of mechanism, and they could do it, in which you sort of uploaded that AI, it gets compiled into a new EXE, and then allow other players to download and use that altered EXE, though of course it may be a lot more difficult than I'm thinking it would be, but there's definitely that. For a single processor, computer, I have a very good one. Not the best out there, but a very good one. Better than 90% of the people on Steam or whatever, if you're looking at the, Steam, which I think is very good and a very, very telling about the PC community. This sort of Steam survey of systems that it does it periodically, and probably more than 95%. But even that still has difficulty late stages in some of those games. So yeah, I get your point. Good to see you here. In the back matter at all, how does the mechanic work in this game? Okay, this is what you're talking about. Like I've said before, this still has secondary supply, so it isn't going to starve. But as I kill each of these units, they're not going to be replaced. because I can't get more there. Now, there are objectives, as in calculating victory and loss of this game, and by the AI holding these 4 objective hexes, because it's this and these other 3, it has more points. But if I take enough other objective hexes, or and this is some of the reason, I can understand that this is and this here is, a national sort of objective, as opposed to just a town. So it's greater weight, and it's thinking, yay, we're holding these, but it may ultimately lose these. But if I can get Paris, it's still an overwhelming victory. The only thing, and as you'll notice, this is a detachment. This is a detachment. And this is a detachment. So there's just a few detachments here, but more and more is becoming detachments. It just needs to be screened enough that it's not going to have a breakout. And once we get get this area here cleaned up, and supply will flow through here, like it's flowing through down here and flowing throughout here. We'll have enough supply coming through to deal with Paris or other things. So it's just going to be sort of a surround and forget kind of thing. Isn't siege artillery modded into the game so you can take those forts? Well, there's artillery, this is bigger than what would it be divisional artillery, so that's sort of siege. I could take it. It's just, do I care to? I don't. I want to keep pushing to the objective. The objective of this scenario is not to take Verdun, it's to take Paris and defeat the French. So, stick to what is the proper goal. Okay, let's take another quick look at reinforcing. Okay, see, he can be reinforced. Well, I don't really want to overstrength reinforce. It's more expensive than standard strength, and of course you'll lose it easily. I do spend it to reinforce artillery, which, since it's not sitting on the front line, often doesn't lose its reinforced levels. Okay, well, that's pretty good. If there's anything more to buy, so we'll just German morale rises their forces near Paris. So I progress on command and control. Good. That will help our HQ units. So some rain up in the north there, that will slow up movement, and also it affects supply, I believe, off the rail lines. I don't think it affects it on the rail lines. But if people want the detailed rules, they can get the rules out and read them. That's why you move the aircraft forward, so they get to intercept bombers and such. And that, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a lady here, is why we dig in and hold, because they do have artillery that can come up and just pound us. Why we don't weaken that field, but is... Ooh, that was... Rather harsh attack. Okay, now that gives some defensive artillery. Good. Disrupt those Belgians a bit, and we take out. At least Newport there is not really that vulnerable. And we just lost our detachment. But notice what we've done is they've abandoned this. And they're now attacking our detachments, which are entrenched. And not easily just taken out. I don't think he's entrenched, but I wasn't expecting that. These guys are entrenched. Yes, that is, and that's what I really like about this game is that it does simulate attrition losses. Now, see, he's way out of supply from up here, I'm sure. Symbolizes. So we lost a detachment and a division, and they suffer attrition losses there, and we spot it here. And munitions production was a major element in this war. Okay, so what we're going to do here is drop him here, this detachment, and this detachment. Here to replace some of these divisions that we're going to move. Okay, so we can attack him pretty easy, but we can shoot a couple of shells here to weaken them. Let's attack with this unit here. Okay, so that takes him out. We're going to move these guys fresh, and they're entrenched. We're not going to attack this turn. He's down at 6, so we're going to reinforce with him. Now here, 4 rounds, 3 rounds. Yeah, let's do this. These 2 rounds from you. No, let's get them well. Fine, we're not going to chase them. Okay, down here we've got just 2 rounds, but he can shoot up here. If we can, let's reinforce these guys before I forget. And to hopefully take him off the board. No, not quite. But we are putting a lot of pressure on these guys up here. Come down here. We're retreating back there. But what we can do here, okay, and we replaced a bunch of the units on the front line with detachments, so they are weaker. We're a little weaker than I was anticipating. There we go. Yeah, we took some damage, but we can afford that. I don't think they're going to come back from this, meaning push back up into here. And here. Down, that's good. You can come. There we go. You keep moving towards Austrian troops. I don't know if they're going to try to launch up into his position there. Yeah, where's he going to go? And this gives me enough points again to, well, let's again go straight down. I think these guys are either forming a defensive here or moving down to Epinal. Either way. And we can just still hang on the defensive. Now they've pushed into here. Okay, I'll cancel. I want to see what these are entrenched. So we will reinforce these guys. This is just a detachment. Okay, so they're still getting a reasonable amount of supplies. So, these guys need to be entrenched. Probably just straight north. Now, of course, there's no, I mean, yeah, sure, there's this 5, points for protection or whatever there. But it would be just so much better to move back, allow Epinal to be your main sort of forward position, try to hold here along down to here very effectively. And that would free up. You could probably hold this line with less troops than you have here, actually hold it, as well as freeing up troops to go other places. But they're panicking over there, so that's good. Did you ever play Global Conflict Strategic Command? No, I didn't, if that's the name of it. I'm very curious about play by email multiplayer or how. Well, I don't know in that game how it worked. Here, it's I do my turn and then I end it, and it goes off, and the other person can replay it, meaning see his side, his units get attacked or whatever, and get his side of the information. And then he gets his turn. So just turn by turn. At least this for this game. All right. Let's see. We do need to take this, and they were out of it. Okay, now we got this detachment. Okay, he can't really. We're gonna move you here and trench you facing, yeah, straight north. Just I don't want somebody coming after that artillery from here. Here, okay, so another unit is no longer in there. Now that unit, I believe, can still be rebuilt and placed back on the map. Now back over here, not up at Verdun. So that's, you can come here. We'll trench at least for a while there. That will allow supplies to flow much, much better. Okay, so either we need to go south or we need to go north. Those are the two basic directions. Coming southwest is not really a sustainable objective. Okay, 6 shells. Well, hmm. Yeah, let's swap these two out. You can entrench looking north like that. We can see about getting these guys strategically moved somewhere else. But I think they'd be better either on this axis or this axis of advance. Coming up like that. Okay. Well, okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's effective. We'll come in here. He will entrench and allow this guy to move forward, and I guess we will move up here. I know they're not entrenched, but I'm wanting to sort of protect this gun and get pressure onto these guys. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to take a break now. It's just been, what, 2.5 hours, I know, but still, just feeling a bit tired here. Ah, yeah, we're doing really well. We're pushing in. Um, we're trying to flow like water around their resistance points, but still moving up with the supply chain here, railways. So I think we're doing good. I will be continuing this next week. Tomorrow, I hope you'll join us while we play some War Thunder. You can even play along with us if you like. So thank you, everyone. And I will see you hopefully then. So, yes, have a very good day or evening with everyone. So thanks so much, everyone.